Okay, so a lot of biography, that means I'm not very young. And it's usually not the best to start with. But I do have very large experience, both in Soviet system and in already 33 years of free democratic country. And this gives me confidence to evaluate, to compare, and to have a vision and take the leadership for creating future, not of my country only, but the region. And I had a chance also to be in the framework of European Union. And this experience gives me confidence even today. Then we are talking about war on our borders. Then we're talking about the geopolitical security framework, which is collapsing in front of our eyes. The Second World War geopolitical security infrastructure really is not able to help us to contain the peace and to achieve the peace. And this is happening in front of our eyes without political strong leadership in Europe and in the world. And this is a huge, huge problem which we are facing. Then we're talking about peace in the world. Everybody talks about the peace. Everybody wants a peace. Nobody wants to go to the war. But do we have the choice today only to ask for negotiations? What, we would like to have second Korea Peninsula? If we today will give in Ukraine's territory, we will have frozen conflict which will be all the time hanging on our heads with a threat of war expansion further. After 2014, then the Western world practically do not react to Crimea occupation. Lithuania, me, was the first who named the Russia as terrorist state. In 2014, I was attacked, not only by other politicians, and naming as extremist or something. Only inside my country, nobody understood what I said, and everybody tried to not to go into deep evaluation what's happening, better not to think about it. What happens? That we, the West, allowed Russia to strengthen, to become more aggressive, and to expand towards direct invasion of the neighbor. And if we're talking about the possible peace in future, we need to realize that it is not the war against Ukraine. It is the war against the West. It is the war against democracy. It is the war for the imperialistic ambitions of 18th century. 18th century. It's a crazy ideology which lives in the past of 18th century. And we still are allowing this to happen because we are too late with help, too slow and too little to help. If we're talking about, for example, the weaponry assistance, we minimum late about 3 months, minimum late about 3 months. And this costs not only Ukrainians, because a lot of volunteers are. Our economy is suffering because we are helping in one or another way the Ukraine to stand against. But Ukraine is standing against the Russians instead of us, not only instead of Ukraine. They are gaining us time of peace by their blood of their people, women, and all country to be destroyed. They're gaining us time. Do we understand this that way? No. Do we understand that we already living in the practically third world war? No. And that's a mistake we are doing again. What we did again after 2014. Because our economies are not yet transferred to the war economies. Russia is doing this. Believe me, in a year time, they will have all economy transferred to the military. And we already today saying that Ukraine is shelling twice as more as all NATO is producing of possible the military shells in the battle. So that means that very soon we will also become without any reserves left. So the war, Russia is in the war. They're willing and have ambitions in the war. We are still thinking that we can survive without involvement and with the hands of Ukraine to push for the peace. It will not happen. The war will expand if we will behave that way. The war already is expanding because if not directly militarily, it's expanding because of economy, because of energy crisis, because of social tensions and crisis, I mean refugees from Ukraine, and because of the country, very large territory, is under threat of wiped out. That's how Russia is making their military offense. And if in the very beginning, we, Baltic states, Poland, and everybody on the border, Romania, we thought that we became members of NATO, and this will secure us by Article 5. And we had the defense plans, which I was fighting for. Then I was a president in 2011, first time after our membership, we got defense plans, in which there was written that for if somebody will attack our territories, we will retreat, and only after 60 days we will try to take them back. The war in Ukraine showed that you cannot retreat. If you retreat, nothing will be left to regain. That's how the Ukraine, or Russia's war in Ukraine is teaching us. Today's war, it is a mixture between Second World War, First World War, and the modern technology war. Plus, it is also informational war. It's not just military war. It is ideological war, which democracies are still too weak to resist. Resilience of Western societies is too weak, mainly because of political elite is trying to avoid, to explain how dangerous this war is, not only militarily, but also ideologically, also economically, also culturally. How many political corruption we saw during these years before the war? In Germany, we call it in our country Schröderization. We saw in France, one prime minister also. We saw in Austria, dancing with Putin, one minister. And we in Baltic states, we were in Poland, we were saying it is dangerous to be dependent so much. It is dangerous to be corrupted politically, to allow to influence political life in Western development countries. Everybody thought that it's small things. Everybody thought that it is not influencing so much decision-making. We needed such a bloody war for Germany to decide to be less dependent on Russian energy, while Lithuania. Then I met first time with Putin 2010. I realized that we have no choice but to become independent on energy dependency, because we were paying 30% more on gas than Germany was paying, mainly because we felt too independent and we not surrendered. And we were not corrupting politically into Russia's energy actions. And I pushed government to create and to build LNG terminal. It was first LNG terminal in 2015. And we were able to reduce to zero the supply of gas to Lithuania already in 2015. It was first LNG in the region. I was so criticized by environment that it is expensive, it's cheaper to buy from Russia. Who thought, even not me, that after 7 or 8 years it was so strategic decision we are seeing now? But we knew by our skin to be dependent on Russia for strategical economic things, it is very politically dangerous. The real independence for any country, especially for us, it was not only to declare independence, but it was necessary to be independent and to have a choice on economic relations, on energy. Only this gives you real independence, because you have independence to choose. While Germany, before the war, became without choice of choosing, fully practically depending on the supplies from the East. And the war opened this as a huge strategic mistakes of the political elite during these years. I don't want to go into the reasons of that, but one thing was very clear, that we have been not listened. Our experience on the border is so deeply unique that we lived through not only Soviet occupation, as we call, but even during these 30 years of dependency. But I remember with Chancellor also talking about this. But of course, the political elite, the industries in a lot of Western countries were used to this cheaper energy resources, and they didn't understood how they felt dependent, not only economically but also politically, into the trap of Russia's corruption instincts. Which is, even today, we do see in some countries, some political parties are under this influence. But this didn't allow appropriately to react to this kind of threat from Russia. Today, the war opened a lot of things for us, but do we expect that we can learn again from history? I know that some politicians in some countries, including Germany, are already only saying, okay, let's go for negotiations, let's have peace, and everything will be as was. It will never be the same, never. No matter what we want. Putin made this disappear. The peace and security structures are absolutely demolished. We will need to create new ones. We need to reform even NATO, because we will have in Vilnius NATO summit. But the ambitions, what I'm hearing, let's invest 2% because it was only up to 2%. Now let's it be the floor 2%. But it's a peanuts. It's a peanuts of such kind of ambition for NATO, because NATO's economy, even Germany's military economy is so non-existent that it is laughable. We are not able to react even to help appropriately to Ukraine, but we are not able. Okay, stockpiles. After 2014, we agreed to have stockpiles for 30 days of intense military battle in all NATO countries. I don't want to be very critical, but Germany has stockpiles for 5 days. 5 days. And Germany is not alone. Not alone. Most countries have stockpiles for one digit days, not even 30 days. What that means, that we didn't land after Crimea, are we learning today? Seeing how we're negotiating on Leopards, how we're negotiating on other supplies, it looks that we are again not learning, and we are not again understanding what's happening. That this war is not only against Ukraine. This war against the West. And it is already going into the stage of expanded world war. We think that if we will not give equipment, or if we will push Ukraine to negotiate the peace, everything will stop. No, opposite. As it happened after Crimea, we didn't react it appropriately, Putin went further. The same will be the case if we will push or somehow strangle Ukraine to not to fight and to give up some territories. It will be only the pause until Russia will be on our territories. And that's, again, I'm returning to political will and political leadership. Everything depends on the leadership. Its only political will is today to help Ukraine on time and appropriately as it is necessary. Its only political will needs to return back to well-financed military security for Europe and to create capacities to defend ourselves. Why I mentioned a little bit about ambition of NATO summit in Vilnius in summer, but the ambition is not yet here. The ambition is, I will say, no, very low. From my point of view, it's very low. It's very technocratic. Of course, everybody will stand and talk how much and how well, but then we're talking about defense, and we're seeing the examples of Ukraine, for example, on the air defense, missile defense. There is no really such kind of thing on the border of NATO, except few patriots in Poland. That's it. And we're still discussing. We're still discussing about necessity of this. We're still discussing about more troops on our territory. But today, troops no matter so much. That's maybe for Russians matter, but for them it's also how to say, I don't know how to translate. In Russian there is such expression, to throw their hats. That means they have so many people that they don't need anything technical, they can throw the people to solve the problem. So now we're seeing that they're doing this again, and they did this in few wars 100 years ago. So why it is so important for us to have real defense on our borders, real defense. And today's the war shows that it is mainly not the amount of foot on the ground, but it's amount and capacity to defend our airspace from missiles, from the aircrafts, and not only to have the tanks. Tanks are fine, but Baltic states, for example, we do not have strategic deepness of territory for normal war, I mean for traditional war. It's Lithuania, it's about 300 kilometers. About what tanks and quantity of military we're talking? We can defend only with a dome as Israel. It's expensive, yes, but it's the only way to defend in today's war. Does this happening? No. Do we expect these decisions in NATO? Not yet. It's only discussions. So what I'm saying that we are again late, we do not understand real threats, and we behind that time all the time. And why? Again, the lack of leadership to recognize and to explain to people what's happening. Because to explain to our populations, not to be afraid to say, yes, it is dangerous. Yes, we need to invest into that. And now, the further you go from the border, the less discussions about it. If you go to the NATO around the table, again, everybody tries to play their local audience in their countries. And nobody, you don't talk as I'm talking now, because you will frighten population. No, don't make a panic. Again, but Russia is already, with all its ideological society in the war. They're already saying they're fighting not only Ukraine, but NATO and the West. They are fighting, we are retreating, we are not fighting. About what kind of peace we're talking. How you can make a peace if one side is fighting, another is retreating really, or trying to use another country to fight for them. That's a reality today. And I'm very hope that sooner or later we will be understanding this on all levels of political elite levels in all our countries and making appropriate actions. Otherwise, the war will expand. Otherwise, we will be involved directly into hot war, not just only in the Cold War. And otherwise, we're pushing further the possibility to have real peace. And not only peace, but also to revive and to restore the strength of international security architecture. I'm not talking about UN Security Council at all. If you have one aggressor in the council and all decisions are paralyzed, what security functions anymore Security Council does? What? If we have NATO, who is only 9 countries, after decision to have 2%, only 9 countries are investing into defense 2%. From 30? What we're talking about? Do we realize the real threats for security and peace? Or are we're still only talking about it. And we think that Ukraine will solve everything for us and will protect all of us from Russia. So, okay, that's for introduction.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very straightforward message. I think now that everyone has digested lunch, there is more food for thought, and I'm sure there are comments, counterpositions, questions. You can think about yours, so maybe I start with mine. Isn't that in the nature of the pluralist societies that we are, that we don't speak with one voice and we don't have the same threat perception and we don't have the same preferences? Germany just elected a government that announced that after the end of the term, Germany will be a different country. So they promised to reform a lot. And then within 100 days, it was a different country, but not the way it was announced, because the circumstances have changed a lot. So everyone in the driver's seat is frantically trying to adjust and to form a position and to give up core beliefs. So this is happening, but it's different from having Mr. Xi or having whoever can make a strong statement and then it's happening. This is the nature of Western-type democracies.
You're right. There are pluses and minuses, or strength and weaknesses of democracy. That's clear. But everywhere, for any decision, you need leadership. Leadership in politics, as everywhere, means that you are ready to sacrifice your personal interest for the interest of group or country or larger interest. And not thinking about only your personal future, your ratings, your popularity, your election. And all the time you risk. If there is such leadership, not only thinking about 4 years election cycle, you will perform and you will achieve a lot. If you're still trying to adapt yourself to the election cycle of 4 years, which sometimes happens, so you do not have leadership. For example, in European Union, we long time, especially for us, for newcomers, we saw the leadership of Germany, for example, in finance, in economy. And we respected very much the responsible decisions of German government through all these years. But now the situation changed where we need Europeans. We need Germany to lead also on security matters. And I understand that for Germany it's huge, huge time. And I remember in 2016, then I was on official state visit to Germany. The first I met with President Gauck. And we had very, very interesting discussion with him about why Germany is not taking, or afraid, still afraid, to be responsible for security, to increase defense, and to take some responsibilities for European security. And then I met with Chancellor, and we agreed that Germany will take the forward presence responsibility in Lithuania, bringing together also Dutch and Belgian and French military to start this forward presence, foot on the ground in Baltic states, concrete in Lithuania. Step by step, it started, but it was with some kind of, turning and looking backwards through your shoulder. But we need Germany on board. Germany needs to be self-confident and to take not only economic leadership, but also security leadership in Europe. And this is happening, but very slowly, very painfully. We need faster. And the war do not give us time. The war do not give us time for discussions, for sentiments. You need to take responsibility or not.
Okay, if we take responsibility, I think that was also a discussion point yesterday, then it's not only about standing united, but sending a strong signal what we are fighting for. So what exactly, if you would be the philosopher's queen in a system in which your leadership counts and you could make it happen, what exactly would you want the West to do to end the war and to end the killing?
It's very primitive and simple. Survival. Direct physical survival. If we will allow Russia to go ahead, they will come to us. We saw brutality, how they fight. It is not civilized country. It is brutal and aggressive invader, which lives in the imperialist understanding of their glory of 18th century. How you, with civilized philosophy, fight against brutal, wild, uncivilized country? With discussions? No. Russians understand only strength. And if we will not put the strength against them, and we will put only our democratic discussions, they will not leave much time for our discussions. So, why I said it is survival. We on the border, we know directly what that means. We feel this war on our skin directly. Lithuania has a border with Kaliningrad and Belarus. Really, two Russians. We squeezed between two Russians. And the war against Ukraine, how it happened, we took personally as the war against us. We know that it is the war against us. And all in the West, we need to understand that it is a war against us. And why we need to fight for our survival is not theoretical game. It's physical survival.
President Zelensky is pushing for membership in the European Union. What's your position on that?
I was personally negotiating membership of Lithuania, and in '92 I was negotiating first treaty of cooperation, general treaty of cooperation, then in '95 association treaty, and then membership. I know the procedures, homeworks, chapters, but finally, everything depends on political will and window of opportunity, finally. And it took for us about 10 years. But for Ukraine, they do not have this time. And I think that they're ending the membership in all organizations, NATO and European Union, every minute on the ground of the battle, every minute. We cannot apply the same procedures for them as we in peaceful time did to us. Of course, it is a very useful process. We did a lot of reforms, especially after Soviet times. We needed to do everything from scratch. It was useful, yes, but Ukraine is a different matter. Yes, before the war, it was oligarchic country, very corrupted country. Yes, we know these problems. But today, the window of opportunity for all of us, not only for them, Europe and we, in the West, we need security territory, security zone around us, and Ukraine exactly could play security ground for us. Why we need, anyway, we will create some kind of Marshall Plan, anyway, we will be putting a lot of resources for restoring the country. So it's the same as we did helping Baltic states and others with solidarity instrument via European budget. Now, of course, it is different situation. It is even more precisely. We will need to restore already. I think World Bank already said about 500 billions for today, but let's taking into account that it will still not the end. It will be trillions. Why not to do in the framework via European Union? It will be better coordinated because any support, is under very strict conditionalities for country to reform, to see the rule of law, anti-corruption things, a lot of things, and it is very useful mechanism. On NATO, I just wish not to repeat Bucharest situation. Then we missed possibility for them to give their chance for future membership. We left them in the gray zone. Russia used this. And this was an invitation for Russia to speed their influence on these territories and to try to take these territories before NATO arrived. So I wish for all of us not to be afraid to take responsibility and to create for us, just egoistically, even for us, the West, the security zone, helping Ukraine. If not we, Russian will do it. That's simple.
If you let them in, what are the consequences for countries in the waiting room like Northern Macedonia?
I think that today's situation.
Restart problem with Ukraine. When Greece blockaded Macedonia to be member of the European Union, to NATO, and NATO understand, Russia understand that NATO, it's not possible to create a real decision. Why? Because Greece blockaded.
You're right.
But Russia understand, oh, now it's chance to start with our strategy of buffer zone.
I was saying that about.
Start from buffer
Yeah, I was saying about necessity to reform NATO also. And I didn't, I jumped a little bit from this question, but about decision making in NATO. Today, to make a decision, you need unanimity. And we do have examples. Then one country, as we see today, Turkey or Hungary, sometimes Greece, can jeopardize the decision making. So that means if it is a war, it is extremely different situation, we need to revise also how decision making is done in NATO. For example, in the doctrine, nobody talks that publicly and open about that, but we know. If you want to make a decision by all 30, it will take minimum 30 days. 30 days. 300 kilometers, you can go a little bit faster than in 30 days. No, I'm just exaggerating a little bit, but what I want to say, that old decisions, old structures, all procedures, we realize not working anymore. We need to reform even NATO itself, via structures, how fast decisions are made, if how to solve and avoid necessity of unanimity is in some questions. For example, to allow groups, and that's sometimes happening, to allow groups of countries to take enhanced cooperation as in European Union forward and for example, go and do the decisions. But for membership, for example, is still unanimity. So what I am saying that all structures, economic, security, in this war, showed they're not efficient, not working. And we need to be very open and honest to ourselves. The Putin shows our weaknesses, but we need to learn from them. We need to change them.
Now you had times to form a question. We still have a bit time left before another break. Anyone?
So everything is so clear that
It was too clear and hard to swallow, the blunt truth. Which makes it, we have someone. Can we move the microphone to the back? But it also shows the beauty of what the ICD is and does. Yesterday we had a similar situation with another straightforward position, and a day later we contrasted, and it couldn't be more expressive as it appeared. The gentleman, please.
Okay, thank you. Mine is not a question, but an opinion. I just want Your Excellency's opinion on why is the West silent on Israel-Palestinian case? Because I think it empowered Putin to also invade Ukraine. Because if you're silent on that issue, which came before what happened in Ukraine, then it means he also wants to invade because you were silent. So I want your opinion on that, because I think democracy and the growing threats has a fundamental basis which we all have to also recognize. Thank you.
I will answer a little bit more general, if you allow me, that selective reactions, which in the West we are doing, not only in this matter, on a lot of matters, is a mistake. It's inconsistent, unresponsible, and it allows for dictators and aggressors to use this selectivity for their own interests. And this is not only the one example you are giving, it's a lot of examples. And it's supposed to be pain to our consciousness, but we learned in a lot of cases not to see what we want not to see. And this is weakness also, and unresponsibility from the West.
One more. If not, then question.
As Henry Kissinger said, actually we have to push China and Russia apart in order to strategically it says keep a balance. How do you see we could do that while we respond to this situation? And I come from the UK, so we're very much tied in with you. With our forces are in your countries, and we are part of the response force, etc., etc. But how do we, in this situation, keep China and Russia apart? Because the more we are pushing on because of the situation of Ukraine, quite naturally we're responding there, but we're pushing Russia towards China, and for a long time the thrust of diplomacy was to keep China and Russia more separate.
Your thesis is a little bit updated. We were able to say a year or two ago that we're pushing Russia towards China. But today we're pushing Russia into dependency on China, but not to the friendship or cooperation. China is using weak Russia, squeezing the economic profits from Russia, making Russia fully dependent, but playing with us. The main trade is in US, and the main trade of China is in Europe. And it is not really friendship. We don't need to be afraid. The weaker Russia is, and the failures of military on the ground showed for China that Russia is not a partner, serious one, or useful. Useful as for India, because they're buying cheaper energy resources. So let's not be afraid that we are pushing. Is this territory fury that don't irritate Russia, maybe not criticize too much, we're pushing to China? No. China will show sooner or later the interest in the Far East of Russia's territory, and already today they are using also weaknesses of Russia today. So really Putin not making them closer, but making more vulnerable for China. And we don't need to be afraid of it. I don't think so.
We have another one in the back.
What is your position on the advice or assessment of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy in 1963? Because it's very relevant in the present situation. In 1963, President Kennedy, in a grand speech at the American University, said that and that was briefly after the Cuban nuclear missile crisis. He said, no nuclear power should act in such a way that it pushes another nuclear power into a corner where that adversary sees for itself no other option except accepting a humiliating defeat or having nuclear war. That was a solemn warning he gave after he had gone through this nuclear missile crisis. What is your position concerning that?
Every position is right, taking into account historic environment, historic circumstances. At that time, it was a very good position. Today, if we will give in, or if we will say that we are pushing Russia to the corner, we never attacked Russia. Ukraine not attacked Russia. It's absolutely different situation, different history. And if we will allow to be frightened by Russia on nukes, that means we are pushing ourselves into corner. And Russia pushing us into corner. If we would like to be in the corner, that's another matter. But better not to be in the corner. Not allow anybody to push us into the corner.
Well, I have many questions regarding what does that all mean for the future architecture of the European Union and what your vision
Next
would
time,
be and
next
so
time.
on. But I'm coming to Lithuania, so we can continue
Yeah.
the conversation there with my students. And I also receive the warning sign that we have to look at the schedule. So thank you very much for coming to Berlin to share your expertise with us.